Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Circle of Hope podcast. My name is Valerie Hope. I am your host. And this is a podcast that's all about how we use connections with other people and build those relationships that help us grow and thrive. I have by far like the most interesting circle of people. I say, humbly say, I have a great circle of people around me. And so I have been so fortunate to invite some of my favorite people. You have met so many of them over the course of this podcast. And today is no different. Today is more of a professional relationship that has had more like personal friendship tones over time. So Tyler Downing is our guest today. Tyler, you have been my investment advisor for like 8 years or something like that.
8 years. Yeah, I was just thinking about that a moment ago. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so it's hard to believe. Yeah.
I know. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but are you this nice to all of your clients? Because I feel like you and I want first of all, just to give people some context before you answer that question, and I'm not asking it in a self-serving way, but
Yep.
when I started working with you and your business partner, we had a formal meeting. We talked about transferring 401k, all that good stuff. And then somehow I started to share a bit about my work as a coach. And I was in the process of getting my certification through Berkeley, and I needed several hours of coaching. And you offered, I don't know, I can't even remember the interaction that brought us to me coaching you
Yep.
for
Yeah.
a while. And then from there, we've done some volunteer stuff together. And I've been obviously still a client throughout this whole time. So I feel like I'm your favorite. That's
Yeah.
basically what I'm saying.
But I would love to think that I am nice to everyone, right? But
Fine.
you make it easy, right? I think we've always had a good relationship. Easy to talk to, easy to get along with. You're always insightful. I feel like I think I've said this a million times to you. I feel like we leave our meetings as financial advisor client, and I'm learning from you more than you're learning
Mm.
from me. So, um, yeah. I mean, again, yeah, you always like to feel like
No one,
you're
you know what? You don't have to say
no
it.
one, no one
I've
else is going to
said
see this,
it's
right?
implied. I'm your favorite. But we don't have to talk about it anymore. I
Yeah.
don't want, I don't want this to be
There
a
you
whole
go.
thing with your
There you go.
clients and all
Yeah,
that.
yep, yep.
But
I've
I want
always enjoyed working with you. Yeah. So.
same here. And I don't want to say that this is unusual or usual, but I do think I do have high expectations, maybe not the right word, but I do find that if I'm going to invest my time and money and energy into something that especially in some sort of business relationship, that I also want to make sure that it's with people that I trust, that I enjoy spending time with whom I'm learning. And you have made making investment easy for me in many ways. One, because I don't have to learn all the things. You do educate me, but you also take care of business. And I think because of your expertise in the way in which you share the information, I've also been able to take that and parlay it to other relationships that I've had. You have been by far a great connector for other people, that so I've introduced you to the organizations where young people needed to learn about investment, and you've been the one to teach them. I brought my niece to you to learn more about this industry and the career field, and you've been open to that. So I kind of use I leverage our relationship that way to help other people in my life. Yeah, I'm just curious about how is that common? Are you finding that people reach out to you for that sort of thing often?
I think it's yes and no, right? I think, we probably don't do a good enough job of offering up that.
Mm.
We used to do a lot of work with youth, whether it be like
Mm.
the program that you got me into. Nick
Eagle
used,
Scholars, by the way, shout out to the
yes,
Victory
yes.
Medal Foundation. Yeah.
Uh, Nick used to work with, we have a client that teaches, and for years, I don't believe he does not anymore, but for years he taught at like a juvenile facility in McKinney.
Mm.
So Nick would go and speak to these, teenage kids. So we probably don't do enough of that, but I think also anytime it is offered up, I think that's a huge thing for me is, you know, I can remember I had a sixth or seventh grade science teacher, I think sixth grade, that I still to this day can remember like learning about interest rates and CDs and
Mm,
things like that. So I think the younger that young people can kind of grasp those concepts, the better off they'll be in life, or the more financially astute they'll be. So I think to me, I love having those conversations. Love I coach 3 different
yeah.
youth sports teams. Love working with kiddos. So yeah, but yeah, I don't think again, we had as a matter of fact, we did have one other client that had a 16-year-old that probably I don't know a month prior to you and Lucy coming in,
Hmm.
shadowed me for a few days. I think it was part of his
Hmm.
like career day type project,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, for me, I think kind of, and not, this is kind of moving back to something else you had mentioned. Um, Relationships for us is just, do what's right for the client.
Yeah.
Try to be engaged. When we're sitting down with someone, try to be engaged. Try to treat somebody like you'd want to be treated, not like a number or
Mm.
how can I generate more revenue from this client today? It's maybe how can I be impactful and help this person
Good.
in the conversations that we have. So that's the way I look at things, and thankfully we're in a position to where we can do that, right? So
Yeah.
being an independent practice, we don't have sales goals or different
That's
metrics that we
right.
have to hit. So um, yeah, I like to think of that as again just treating people like you want to be treated. So
I hear that. So you're really saying that I should ask you to do even more.
yeah, yeah,
You're not
possibly.
getting
Yeah,
enough. It's not often enough. You could do
yeah,
more. You used to do
yeah.
more. So I'm like, okay, careful what you
Yep.
ask for,
There you
Tyler.
go. Yep. Careful what you wish for. Um, I do enjoy it though. I mean, again, I think, and even the, oh gosh, and I'm so sorry. What was the program? This has been several
Oh,
years
so
ago.
this was Eagle Scholars. Yeah, it was during the
Scholar.
pandemic, and it was from the Vickery Meadow Youth Development Foundation. Yeah.
Yes, I really enjoyed that because and then you get a group of teenage kids. Some of them are really engaged. Some of them are asking goofy questions. Overall, I think it was a good learning. Hopefully, a good learning experience for most of them. So, um, but
It is.
happy to help. Yeah,
Well, I think, and because you take it seriously, you mentioned as a sixth grader, that teacher mentioning the things that she mentioned to you that opened something up. Maybe that wasn't the moment you declared that this is a career I wanted, but it does open up a place of curiosity. And we don't know, maybe one of those young adults there, these were all seventh to I think they were 10th graders actually, the group that we worked with.
yep,
Um, who knows, one of them now knows something that they wouldn't have unless you'd said it to them. But I think you've said this in other ways, and I think you even mentioned it with Lucy, and you had an intern working with you all during the summer also. What do you get from it? Like, what is it that you receive from mentoring or teaching young people?
well, that's a good question. Because I actually thought about this a while ago when we were talking. To me, it's not always about what do I get out of this, right? So anytime I'm sitting down with whether it's a client or mentoring, I think obviously you want to try to provide some insight. There
Mm,
is some joy that comes from being able to help
mm,
a young person, or even doesn't have to be a young person. It could be a client that's 30 years my senior.
yeah.
Um, Sharing some enlightening information or being able to help them solve a problem they're facing. It does give you some joy and satisfaction that, oh, okay, I am kind of good at this. Uh, and but I think just yeah, in general, helping people, right? Um, and again, I hate to move ahead, but I think you'd mentioned something about centers of influence or
Yeah.
relationships, and
Hmm.
to me, it's how can I help this person, and then in fold, they're going to help me eventually. I don't care if it's today or next month or 2 years from now. Eventually, there's going to be a circumstance where that comes back to me, right? Um, mean, I think yeah. I mean, the best answer I can give is just maybe the joy or satisfaction that
Mm.
that I was able to hopefully help someone in a small way, and then maybe it's a
Yeah.
significant way. Remains to be
Okay.
seen, um,
Okay.
but
Yeah, I think there is something about the joy and satisfaction that one gets from helping other people achieve their goals or providing something that someone's requested. I wonder, I have two questions. Well, we'll start with this one, kind of continuing the same thread. Are you learning anything when you are working with when you're teaching others? Because sometimes I know as a coach and as a facilitator and a teacher, when I share something, I have an insight of my own while I'm sharing something. Perhaps, you mentioned it validates the fact that you have a skill set and you have knowledge. But I wonder, is there anything that you have noticed when you're working with these young people that you learn or it confirms for you about your experience or expertise?
yeah, I mean, to me, it could be just as simple as kind of what you just said is as you're trying to explain something, because
Mhm.
that's the hardest thing, right? Is figuring out, okay, what kind of communicator is this person, and how do I communicate effectively to where they can understand the concept or the idea that I'm trying to portray. And sometimes that's extremely challenging, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, the way I'm explaining something could make total sense in my head, but
Mm,
yeah, I may not be connecting with that individual.
mhm,
I think, definitely learn through those processes or through those conversations, you know, maybe a better way to communicate or a better way to, use a metaphor or analogy um, to try to get the point across or to help
mm,
educate or help somebody understand what it is that we're trying
mhm,
to solve for or what we're trying to explain, whether it be understanding the stock market or why we invest in this way or
mhm,
why asset allocation is an important variable to your risk return profile and how you're invested. I could go on and on, right? But I think
mhm,
and then sometimes we learn from, not just learn from through communicating and how do I do this in the most effective way, but sometimes we learn from just from the individual across the table from us or,
yeah,
on the other end of the computer screen. Uh,
mhm,
this in this circumstance, and it could be in a million different ways, I think.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, I think that's one thing that you are extremely talented at
mm,
is connecting with people. Um, just yeah, I think communicating with people,
mhm,
um, portraying idea. I feel like what you every time we sit down, you've got insight on whether it's leadership or business relationships or something. I feel like I'm always learning something from you. So depending on who it is that I'm talking to,
yeah.
I feel like always learning something. Um,
Okay.
but
What I think what I'm getting from what you're sharing too is you have a willingness when you're in engaging with someone, you have a willingness to hear what they may be offering that maybe is not explicit, right? I don't know if I've ever come in, hope I didn't come in so presumptuous to say, let me talk to you about leadership, Tyler. You need to learn some things, right? It's not that. I think your willingness to engage in a conversation that goes beyond maybe the sometimes the purpose, right? Because I come and see you guys maybe what a couple times a year, if that, or we'll do an online kind of review of some of the stuff in my accounts or whatever, and end up our conversation kind of ends up taking a turn into some work stuff, professional stuff, even personal in some cases. But I do think your openness, right, is really there's an openness about you that inspires me in my case to share, perhaps, or even I think that the fact that I offered you coaching, I don't even remember how that came up because it's not something typical that I go in looking for a service from a provider and then end up somehow offering them coaching too. Do you remember how that even came about?
I think we were really good at getting off track, and so I think we were like we kind of as you just were illustrating there. Yeah, I think we went from like financial conversations to just kind of different stuff, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you just this is what I recall at least, just kind of asked me, hey, well, I'm actually finishing up this certification, and I need some practice hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, sure. So I think
Yeah.
we went through that. I think we had a few sessions, I believe.
I think we did 3. Yeah.
So, um,
Thank you, by the way. I did get my certification, so
yeah,
it worked.
yeah, yeah. Uh, but again, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed those conversations because it helped me think out because I can get so not narrowly focused, but I have a hard time thinking outside the box. I'm not a very creative thinker. I don't think at
Mm,
least. And I feel like that is something that you helped me with of just
mm,
kind of being sorry, I had a fly or something here. Being a little bit more creative or thinking differently maybe about things.
mm.
Um, and I can't think of a specific, but
As long as it doesn't tank any of my numbers, I'm fine. Be as creative as you want.
yeah, there you
No,
go.
no,
There
no.
you go.
No, I think, but I think to your point earlier, you're talking about how you have a willingness to help other people also, and likely in that exchange, right? My need for practice hours was an opportunity for you to also support me, right? Support and contribute in that way. So I'm curious if you're not like you and Nick, your business partner, are not necessarily receiving these types of invitations as often as you used to, perhaps in the past. How do you know when to offer help? Like how do you know when someone needs your support or expertise?
Yeah, that I think, maybe just kind of paying attention to the conversation and to the person and whether it's context clues, somebody's talking about, hey, I'm trying to, put together this, golf tournament to raise awareness for,
Mm,
childhood cancer or different things like that. We have, we've done some different things like that, and really that's I'm not trying to boast or anything. I mean, those situations have come about because people bring them up, right? And it's
yeah.
like, oh, we would love to help with that.
Mm,
Um, so how do we know? I mean, I think, yeah, just paying attention, right, to what people are talking about. And then again, having a genuine interest in like, not not, again, let's say somebody approaches us with something and, I guess we could be selfish and say, oh, that stinks. Sounds like that's a big problem. You know, good luck with that.
I
Um,
can imagine.
I think, I think any decent person would say, "Oh, let me help," or "Is there a way that I can
Yeah.
help?" And so, but we could probably do a better job. We like, you know, and Nick is in a different phase. His youngest, so he's got a junior in college at Arkansas, and then his
Mm,
son just started as a freshman at OU. And
mm.
I have a third grader, a kindergartner, and a 2.5 year old. So we're
Yeah,
kind of
you
in
guys are
different
just
phases
starting.
of life as far as what
Yeah.
our time allows. Um, but I think being philanthropic or volunteering in different
Mm,
ways is important, not only like from a business perspective. I think it's just again as a human being, right, and
mm,
giving back to your community or to your network. Um,
mhm.
I think there is again, I'll go back to the words joy and satisfaction. I think there's
Yeah.
when you give back to people or you're willing to give more than you receive. I do think there is some sort of whether it's a dopamine hit or whatever
Yeah.
it is, where it gives you kind of this feeling of oh, look, I did this right.
Mm.
um and then maybe and that sounds very egotistical, maybe like that it's all for me.
Oh.
um but I do think there is, the way the human brain is wired, we all kind of have a little bit of that, right? So, um,
I don't think it's egotistical at all. In fact, you've seen likely in the email exchanges, I have that quote, the bottom of my email is from Howard Thurman, the theologian, that says, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, and then go do it. Because
Yeah.
what the world needs are more people who have come alive. And I think what you're talking is really a combination of the two, is that you notice when somebody needs some support, and you're able to make that contribution, right? It fits into what your interests or your expertise or your time and all those things. And you're able to say yes in a way that's makes you come alive, but knowing that this person, obviously, because you've been paying attention and listening, is something that they've needed and makes them come alive. Like you
Yeah.
told me recently, actually, about your volunteering to coach to do baseball for your son's team.
Yeah.
So walk us through a little bit, just this being like a case study, if you will, not that formal, but just some as an example of a moment where you noticed there was a need, you had the opportunity and the time or the expertise to do it. Like talk us through a little bit of how that came about. What made you say yes to doing that and how it's going so far?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, the DFW Metroplex is full of just extremely competitive people, business, personal life, sports, etc. And so we've had great coaches. I can't complain about any of the experiences we've had, but I think I just kind of came to a point to where I thought, okay, we can probably do a little better here. And I quickly realized, oh my gosh, have I bitten off more than I can chew? Because it is, I mean, it is a very competitive environment, and we're trying to
Mm,
build a team. And we kind of, it was kind of a, just an off the cuff decision where it was like, okay, we gotta make a move. Let's do this. Um, and so that was probably 3 or 4 months ago, probably May, I guess, is when we made that decision. And I think our conversation was probably midsummer, mid to early
yeah, a
summer. And
couple
so
months after that. Hmm.
I was still kind of in the middle of it, trying to put together this team. And so it was a fun process.
Mm.
We were finally able to get enough kids on the roster to where we felt comfortable. But again, these are 8-year-olds, and I'm being interviewed by parents to ask about my background and all this and different stuff, and
Mm.
which is totally understandable.
Sure.
Um, but that was a fun process, and so now we're kind of in the phase of we've got this team. Now we've got to try to develop these kids and get them better and
Mm.
get them playing together and playing as a team and all that stuff. So not a business, related topic or conversation, but I think again, it's just what I realized is I was like, I got to put my sales hat on.
Interesting.
This is not just youth sports. I have to selling myself.
The
Um,
parents.
Parents to try to get them.
Uh,
Well, and then really to be what you realize is you have to sell yourself to the kids too, right? To get them to buy in, to get them to trust you, to get them um, to be disciplined,
mm.
right? And there's an element of discipline and there's an element of fun, um,
Yeah.
to try to get them to trust you and respect you. And so
Mm.
it's a fun process. It's
Yeah.
it's it's kind of like parenting. It can be challenging, but it's super rewarding. Um, and um, and so yeah. So and I again I me and another dad we were both just like, okay, our kids deserve better.
Interesting.
We can put something together and do a good job, right?
So
Uh,
the two of your are co-coaches, you've both taken on.
co-coaches, and then we've added 2 or 3 other dads, three other dads, to kind of help coach, help
Yeah.
practice, help run the team. So there's 5 of us in total, and that may seem like a lot, but with 8-year-olds,
Yeah.
you probably need we could probably use 10, so
You
it's
don't want to burn anyone out.
yeah, yeah, so,
Spread the wealth.
yeah.
I'm curious because I think in the conversation where you were talking about not only recruiting more kids for the team, but you were also talking about getting more support as like coach support. So how did you go about deciding who would be best, right, to fill in this team and support the group?
From a coaching perspective,
Yeah, coaching perspective.
I mean, I had a couple dads that volunteered, so that's always makes it easy, right? When a dad volunteers, and then obviously, trying to make sure that everyone's like-minded, right? That
Mm,
um, again, that these are just kids. We want to be competitive. We want to, um, we want to be competitive. We want them to be disciplined. We need to
yeah.
work on things, but we also don't need to scare them away from the game.
Hmm.
Um, and so, and I already knew several of them, right?
Okay.
So, um, you know, two of the dads that we added recently live in the neighborhood. Their kids are, we played other sports with their kids, or my oldest son is friends with their kids, so that
Mm,
makes it easy,
the connection, yeah.
because you already, yeah, exactly, you already have that
Mhm.
connection, you already kind of know this person. um, are they going to lose their temper in the dugout and start
Mm.
cussing at the umpire or something like that? You don't want that.
That's important.
Um, and so to me, that was important, right? And again, this kind of comes with the competitive nature of I said, I think there's a lot of highly successful people in the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex, and therefore they want that for their children, right?
Mm.
They want their
Hmm.
children to be successful, whether it be in school or in sports or the speech and debate, club,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
yeah.
Um, Everyone's pushing their kids to be the best that they can be, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that, while and I'm hard on I can be hard on my boys. I have high expectations, but they are just kids. I think so. I think
Mhm.
that's it's finding that balance. Um, you know, but yeah, I don't yeah. I
Interesting.
don't know if that answers the
Yeah.
question, but
It does, because it sounds like you're really thoughtful and intentional about who you are going to surround yourself with, so that you were able to put your best foot forward, right, for everybody, and for the good of the coaches and the team, the young men, the young boys. The idea that, you had a certain level of temperament that's required. You knew that you needed to bring enough structure, but also enough fun, that you needed to also, pitch the families that were going to bring their kids to practices and to the games and that sort of thing, that you all were trustworthy group of people, that you had their children's best interests at heart. Like, all of those things require, these are all relationship skills, right? Relationship building skills that you are pointing to. And even if it's happening in a volunteer basis, right? But the idea that you and the other parents were so mindful about not only how to set up this team, but whether or not, hey, am I going to bring my 8-year-old to participate in this? Do I trust what's going on and how things are handled? And is this someone that I can talk to in case I need something, or I have a challenge, or right, something that needs to be resolved? So yeah, that whole ecosystem sounds like it was built very intentionally.
we've tried. That actually is funny you use that word, because I've said that my assistant coach, and I hate to say assistant, he's pretty much we're basically co-head coaches, I would say, at this.
Yeah,
But we've talked about, we've been very intentional, right? That's a word we've used a
yeah.
lot about how we tried to structure the team, what our practice agenda looks like, what kind of what our goals are for these kids, to get them better and to prepare them. Um, because one of the other things that's kind of interesting, and I won't bore you to death with this stuff, um, but we jumped to 9U. So when from 8U to 9U, you go to kid pitch. So it was coach pitch.
Okay.
There's no like leading off. There's no stealing.
Hmm.
It's kind of jumping. These kids are jumping into like full on like high school baseball rules.
More advanced.
Uh,
Okay.
Whereas it used to be, at least when I was a kid, you were kind of gradually learning these new rules, and you didn't have high school rules, until probably seventh grade. Um,
Hmm.
so it's a big learning curve, basically, is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. And so yeah, it's a challenge. So it's a lot for them. It's just as much like learning the game, learning the rules of the game,
Hmm.
as it is skill development and
And
character.
performance. Yeah.
Um, But
That's
anyhow,
I no, I appreciate that. I have three brothers, and in fact, all three of them do some level of sports right now. Soccer has been kind of like the family sport, so to speak. So one of
I,
my brothers currently is coaching a team. I think he's coaching his daughter's team, but also coaching a separate team, I believe now. Another one just started football. His 7-year-old son wanted to do football, and so he started, supporting. I'm not sure in what capacity yet, but he's helping the coaching with in the football team. So it's interesting to hear their experiences, especially
yeah,
when your child's on the team. I imagine there's a different dynamic that happens. But
yeah,
but I remember one of my brothers mentioning that when he was coaching the soccer team, that he wanted, because a lot of the people on the team were they were from the US, born and raised in the US, hadn't had a lot of experience playing or going to other countries and seeing the soccer culture in other countries. And so
mhm,
he wanted to expose them to soccer culture, not just soccer on the weekends, like a hobby. And so we talked a lot about how he would be able to diversify his team, not only the people who are playing on the team, but their way of playing and perceiving the sport. And
yeah,
so I'm curious, and you kind of talked about it when you're saying how the rules that your kids are exposed to now versus before has changed, and that also changes what you develop in them. It changes how you structure. There's so many things that come into play, and I don't want to talk about a whole bunch of sports because I don't know enough to make this
okay,
conversation interesting for another 30 minutes.
yeah, yeah,
And all that said, I wanted just to call out that even in a space like this, as a volunteer, you and others, I'm talking about my brothers and other parents and your co-coaches have found ways to continue to build relationships and community in ways that are safe, in ways that are productive, in ways that are effective, right, and inspiring to other people. I don't think that it's not just something that happens at work. It's not just something that happens because, you have clients that you need to take care of. Like it's something that it sounds like for you, you bring that part of you into all these other areas of your life.
yeah, yeah. I think at least I try, right? I think
Yeah.
I do a good enough job of that, especially again, um, with the sports stuff in particular. Again, I'm a competitive person, right? I like to win. I want to be, I want our kids to excel. And there's an aspect of that of like if you're, I can remember my dad just beat this thought into my head as a child. He probably told me a million times, if you're going to do something, do it well, right?
Mm,
Um, so anytime I'm engaged in whether it's, my job or volunteer work or,
mm,
now coaching youth sports, it's something that I want to, hey, I want to put my best foot forward and try
mhm,
to do a good job at this. And if that means, keeping the parents happy or explaining to them what our, process is and what our goals and plan for this team is, then that's part of it, right?
yeah.
That was something that I think that was in that conversation we had like in June or July. That was, I think at least I think I was having kind of a aha moment where I was like, okay,
Mm,
this is part of the job as well, right?
yeah.
Is kind of selling this program to the parents.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, and I think that's anything when you're trying to build someone's trust. I think to me, I always told folks I'm not the best salesman. I wouldn't have been a good salesman, transactional salesperson or anything like that. Uh,
mm,
I would like to think that I do an okay job at my job as a financial advisor. Um, and and I think a lot of that's more relationships than,
mm.
and building trust, um, than it is, again, this transactional kind of, uh,
Yeah.
how do I sell this thing to somebody today? Uh,
Well, that's huge. I'm glad you brought it. You've said the word trust like 8 times already. So let's go there because
yeah,
it came up in the so this summer when I brought my niece Lucy, she's 17 now and has expressed an interest in getting into finance. And so I thought, what, let me introduce her to some people in that world and she can kind of see what's what. And you had us sit in a conversation you had with a client, right? And you asked the client for permission and all that sort of thing on the phone. And I remember us having a conversation about trust shortly after, and I shared with you and your intern the trust equation, right? This idea that building trustworthiness is all about having high credibility, right? Knowing what you're talking about, high reliability, that you follow through on the things that you promise, intimacy and understanding and the respect and psychological safety with the person. And all that while balancing your self-orientation, right? Your need to fulfill what's best for you and also their needs to balance all that. And this is not my framework. It comes from a book called The Trusted Advisor that I
Yeah.
often rely on to communicate in my coaching. But but in that conversation, I did share that one of the reasons that I started doing business with you and Nick was at the time I was working on getting debt free, and I had worked with a financial coach on doing that. And when I was ready to start investing, I'd been doing a lot of work with oh my gosh, what's his name? Oh,
Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey, yes. I was doing all the baby steps and all that good stuff. And I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to make sure that I start maximizing my investments. So my coach recommended you. And I'd also gone to another company. I'm not going to talk about other companies' names here, but I went to another company. And in my conversation with the other company's advisor, I was sharing a bit about this whole debt-free journey and how proud I was of myself. And she's like, oh my gosh, I wish that my husband and I could get debt-free, but we haven't been able to for whatever reasons. And I was like, I don't know if I trust someone to manage my money that can't seem to manage theirs. So
Yeah.
this is a no. But then when
Yeah.
I came to
Remember that.
you,
I remember that conversation very vividly. Yeah, I mean, I think that's
not
important,
like
right?
this wasn't you guys. I want to clarify. This was somebody else, another company, and then I came to you all from that recommendation. And when I had a conversation about it, you all were on the same wavelength as me, and we had a real honest and open conversation, which I think built that intimacy
Yeah.
and credibility about how to manage money and how you were managing money for not just for other people, but also for yourselves. So I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay, I like these guys.
Yeah, we've always been more conservative in our financial, guidance and advice that we provide. Obviously we had that relationship with as being an endorsed local provider with Dave Ramsey for years.
Yes.
The only reason we don't have that any longer is we when we split off, and gosh, we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary at this
Mm,
the new firm.
mhm,
But when we split off from the larger group that we were with, we we didn't want to cause a fight with the territory, the Dave Ramsey territory. So, he can only have so many endorsed, whether it's
mm,
CPAs, financial
yeah.
advisors, et cetera, in a certain demographic or geographic. Um, and so, anyhow, so we split from the Dave Ramsey endorsement, but we kept all of those concepts
The
and I
principles, yeah.
the principles, yeah. And so yeah, so I definitely remember when we met, you were like, so okay, so you guys are debt free, right? And it's like, yeah, yeah, no, we one of the best things that I ever did was my wife and I, right after we got married, we did the financial peace course.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, because I started at Fidelity in 2010 as a financial representative, got licensed, kind of, they have a tremendous training program for young, professionals that are looking to get, on this career path. Uh,
Yeah.
and, um, and so I was 4 years, 3 or 4 years into being a financial advisor, started off as a rep and then kind of got my advisor license, so forth and so on. But, um, yeah, 3 or 4 years into this, and I start working with this firm that's endorsed by Dave Ramsey, and I'm like, oh, you know, maybe, yeah, I need to do some of this. It's time to put my big boy pants on
Yeah.
and pay off these student loans and whatnot. So we got real diligent about that for probably, I guess it only took probably 2 or 3 years. of my wife and I just trying to be really good with our money. And
Mm.
thankfully, it was before we had kids, so little expenses were less, right? So,
Yeah.
but but yeah, I definitely remember that conversation to this day. Um, and um, and yeah, the Dave Ramsey, I will say he can be kind of stubborn on certain topics, but really the overall theme of what he's trying to share is
Yeah.
be conservative, pay off your debt, live on less than you make.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, how to
very
have
simple
freedom.
principles. Yeah,
Yeah.
having financial freedom, right?
Financial freedom, yeah. And there are a lot of other people, like I follow Ramit Sethi. I think I've shared with you. I follow him a lot too. But I want to go back to this idea of trust in relationships because there's no place I imagine that requires high levels of trust than when you're working with other people's money, right? When people are trusting you and your organization to do to do the right thing, to keep them informed, to make wise decisions, to be a good counsel and advisor. And so I'm curious about how do you go about developing trust with your clients? What are some ways that you have accomplished that?
One of the biggest things is time, right? I think sometimes it takes a long time, right? Sometimes it can take, sometimes it can be like that first meeting that we had with you, where it's like,
Mhm.
these
You're
people
like,
are
take all my money. I trust you.
these people are aligned with me. Sometimes it takes it,
Yeah.
it takes many meetings, and maybe somebody starts working with us, but they're still kind of skeptical. um but for so time, credit worthiness, right? You said that a second ago, the
Yeah.
formula for trust.
Credibility.
uh,
Yeah.
Credibility, doing what you say you're going to
Yeah.
do. So again, so yeah, so doing what you say you're going to do, and then
Mm.
you know, um, credentials or knowledge can kind of be portrayed early on, but I think also it's one of those that it could also take time, right? It could take
Yeah.
several experiences of, oh, okay, this person, another interaction where this person I
Hmm.
felt like gave me decent advice. Um, so I think it's kind of a combination of all of those things. But one of the things again that we really try really hard to do is to show people, hey, look, we're willing to spend the time with you. Um,
Hmm.
Willing to spend the time with you. You don't have to do business with us today or say yes
Yeah.
today, right?
Yeah.
We always use the joke, we're not going to ask you to marry us on the first date. Uh,
Mm.
and so and again, we have the luxury of doing that in our business. Some
Yeah.
businesses, right? Because you're talking to all different
Yeah.
people from different sectors and backgrounds. Some businesses have to figure out how do I make this transaction a yes
Yeah.
today on this sales call, right?
Yeah.
And so kudos to those people that have that skill set or are able to
Hmm.
get that trust and that buy-in that quickly. But for us with people's, you said it, right? With people's money, it's and whether it's $5,000 or $500,000, you
Hmm.
know, it's any dollar that somebody has sacrificed and saved. That's a very important thing to them. And so, we don't take that lightly. And I think, well, of course, neither does the client, right? The client,
Right.
it's their, you know, most sacred thing, right? Their life
In many
savings.
cases. Yeah.
Again, whether it's somebody who's starting off or somebody that has a small amount, a large amount,
Yeah.
it's very sacred to people. So
We should say what the name of your company is, by the way, since we've talked about it. Would you mind?
yeah, Retirement Lifestyle Consultants
Okay.
is the name of our office, the name of our company. We are an independent broker dealer. We clear through an independent broker dealer, Commonwealth. Um, some news around that. We've actually Commonwealth has actually been acquired by LPL Financial, which is another independent broker dealer. And so our firm will stay the same. We'll still be
Yeah.
Retirement Lifestyle Consultants, but we'll be clearing through a different firm here in
Mm.
about 12 months or so. I think it was
Okay.
set to clear to close in or I'm sorry, transition in August of next year. I think it's going to be October of next year, I believe. That timeline.
August 26th. Okay.
But yeah, retirement lifestyle consultants. We started this firm in February of 2020. Sorry, 2016. So yeah, so
Hmm.
this coming February will be
It'll
10
be 10
years.
years.
Crazy
Wow.
to think. So uh,
Well, we don't necessarily have to go into all the details, but I'll make sure to put the website on the show notes. So if people are interested to reach out, they can. But
yeah,
I did want to come back to something because I know the pandemic was a particularly difficult time, I think, economically for so many people. I know it was for me in many cases, and reaching out to you for advice was helpful. Just like, hey, what can I do now? Maybe the revenue is not what it used to be, and so there are moments in my life financially where I've had to reach out for some additional support, and I think that's where that having a high level of trust was so crucial, is because when things become challenging or stressful, having people that I knew I could go to get wise counsel, or to be, think creatively. Maybe, you say you're not very creative, but I think when it comes to giving advice about what to do, when to do it, you do think outside of the box for those types of things. So I'm curious about all of the economics ups and all economical, economic ups and downs that you all have seen with all your clients. How do you maintain that connection with your client when there's so many things in the economic environment that are out of your control?
yep, yep. That's a good question. So for us, it goes back to trying to really, one of the things we really try to do early on with folks, and sometimes it's like, I think clients are like, okay, Nick and Tyler are going to go over this topic with us again, but we try to really educate folks on, um, hey, these bad times are going to happen. We just don't know when, right? So, statistically speaking, about 1 out of every 5 years, we're going to have a bad year in the stock market. 1 out of every 5 years, we're going to have a recession. That's how these business cycles go. So, if we can be prepared for that, um, how we're diversified, how we're invested. Do we have an emergency savings for retired folks? What does that retirement and emergency savings look like, which is a larger dollar figure? Um, you know, um, just really trying to prepare folks for those times so that when it happens, it's like, okay, we told you this was going to happen. We're prepared for it. Like, let's not panic. Um, one of the quotes we always use is, Mike Tyson says everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Right.
Violent.
Uh, yeah,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
it
yeah. That makes
relates to
sense.
our business so much,
For
right? Because
sure.
it's very true. You could correlate that to a lot of different things, but everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and a lot of times that punch to the face is COVID, or
Yeah.
the 2008 financial collapse, or whatever it may be, right? I think because then panic sets in, and it's like
Yeah.
you forget that plan, you forget that
Yep.
you had that plan, uh, or that you've been preparing for this, moment per se. Uh,
Yeah.
and so I think, that to us is just trying to really educate clients around that so that when we do get punched in the face, we can kind of say, okay, ouch, that stung.
Right.
We're prepared for this. We're going to be okay. Um, and for me, that's huge. Uh,
Mm,
that's a challenge, right? I mean, because um, again, I said, about 1 out of every 5 years, but every single year there's some reason,
correction. Yeah.
or I don't know if you just said distraction, but that's a great
I said
word.
correction.
Correction, yeah. So
Yeah.
the market, tends to correct, on
Just
average.
trying to show my credibility as a
Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Uh, but yeah, you're right. Every single year, the market tends to correct, on average, going back for like the last 60, 70 years, about 13%. Now
Mm,
that's an average, right? I mean, I think typically we would see corrections more like in the 5 to 10% range. But distraction, I thought that's what you said, because there's always a
mm,
distraction, right?
mhm, mhm.
Always a reason for people to be fearful, whether it be, hey, I think, the war in the Middle East is going to escalate. We're going to have World War III, or
Yeah.
oh my gosh, have you read this article about the dollar weakening, or and I could go on and on. We could talk about different this topic or that topic, but there's never a shortage of fear around what
Mm.
if this thing happens and it causes us to go into recession, or it
Yeah.
causes the stock market to collapse. Collapses. That's a the journalists love using that word, financial journalists,
Yeah.
collapse,
Mm.
economic collapse. Uh, and the reality is again, we have business cycles, right? We have ups and
Yeah.
downs. Collapses are few and far between, but this is where again, I won't pretend to be like psychology major or anything like that, but this is where I have learned a lot in my 15 years um, about the psychology of how we make decisions,
Mhm.
monetarily,
Yeah.
right? And again, because it is, money is people's most sacred,
Mm.
it's their most sacred asset, right? So, I think it can cause us to make, you know, decisions when we just feel like we've been punched in the face, or maybe we're scared we're about to get punched in the face, so we make a
Yeah.
rash decision to try
Mm.
to avoid that pain, right?
Mm.
And so anyhow, so that's how I think about that. That's how we try to portray it to folks. We try to, again,
Yeah.
just biggest thing is just how do we get prepared for that
Fair. Yeah.
that that scary moment.
And I think that's kind of why, as we were talking about how we build trust, not that I necessarily went in with those types of fears initially, but I was just starting my business also when I first connected with you all. And the learning curve was very steep for me about how to be self-employed and all the things that I needed to learn how to manage my money and setting up my business accounts. Like there was a lot of those things. And so it wasn't just a matter of a transaction of like, well, I need to transfer my 401k. That was kind of what initiated some of it, but there were so many other things that I needed to also learn. But it was great to be able to have my learning curve be steep in places but easy in others, and I think working with you all made it easy in so many ways. And even there are times when I'm like, hey, can you talk to my bookkeeper, can you talk to my CPA and like figure out what I need to do here, right? And you have been very willing to just like, yeah, let me have a conversation with them just to make sure that you're doing, the decision that you're making is really going to support long-term goals, and I remember specifically that there were times where, I just starting to ramp up my business and I didn't have much revenue coming in. And you were like, okay, here's what you can do. Here's some money that you have already set aside, right? Talking about that plan that I was able to use because I had a severance package but I also started, IRA and like all this thing. And I remember how helpful it was to know that I had a support system. In fact, I call you all, like you and my bookkeeper and my CPA, I call you all like my manifestation team. You don't know this, but I'm telling you now. Yeah, because I've really built a team of people. One, because I need to have this level of familiarity and intimacy with people who manage my money. I need it. Not
Yeah,
everybody does. Some people just want a hands off. Hey, look, I pay you, take care of my stuff. Don't talk to me. Don't call me. Send me an email, right? I get my reports. I can download them. They have that. I don't, because it's an area of my life that I know that I need reassurance. I need that level of intimacy to trust that what I'm doing and how I'm doing it is working. And
yeah,
you all, there's three of you that I have doing separate things that I have that level of intimacy with. You have the credibility, you know what you're doing. You show up when you say you're going to show up. You follow up with the things you need to show up, but and your self-orientation is always balanced, so you're always doing what I feel is best for me. And I just know that when it comes to money, we I've not learned that. No one taught me this when I was a kid, right? These are things that I've had to learn over time, but I knew that I needed to surround myself with the right type of people, with the right kind of personalities and values so that I could get the support and the guidance that I needed and I could receive it. Because some people, I'm just like, no, I don't believe what they're saying, or I don't like what they're doing, you know?
Yeah. And I think that goes back to just being able to connect with people, right? Because yeah, you're never going to trust or take advice from someone that you're not certain if you trust that person, right? So
Mhm.
we all, and that happens to all of us, right? You know,
Mhm.
it's whether it's a doctor or I think the most notorious is like the auto mechanic. It's like, is this guy telling me,
Right.
is this guy telling me,
Yeah.
the truth, or do I really need a new flux capacitor? Or
Did you just
I'm like,
get
I
your
don't even
car
know
from
what
the
flux
future?
capacitor is, but
Do you have a DeLorean by any chance in
yeah,
your
yeah.
garage? A
But
flux capacitor.
uh, yeah, I mean, I think that's huge. I know this is your podcast, but I have a question for you because I feel like
Sure,
you're always so good at this, sort of stuff. Is how do you, and I think this is what the podcast is about, right? So
sure.
how do you manage? How do you manage, maintaining your professional and personal relationships and then and or building on those? Because I feel like you
Mm,
always do. I feel like you always have a wide array of people that you work with.
yeah.
How do you go about that?
How do I manage building them or nurturing them or
Maybe a little bit of both.
a little bit of both?
I feel like you do. Again, I feel like you're to pat you on the back. I feel like you do a good job of that. So
Yeah. Well, I think so much has kind of been said in how you and I build our working relationship. I don't make a distinction, at least not one intentionally, where I'm like, this is a business relationship, so therefore I can only talk about XYZ.
yeah,
I think part of my way of living is I want to surround myself. My relationships are very permeable in that way. You and I will always be colleagues, right? The business colleagues. That's not going to necessarily. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to live forever. So I'll just say right here, I'm not planning on take my money out or anything. I'm not predicting anything unless there's like a huge correction or distraction that I just can't manage. Oh, I'm kidding. But the
yeah,
idea is, I think maintaining some permeability in relationships. So it's not a hard, fast, this is only for business. There's some people that are like, these are my work people, these are my personal people, this is my family. Like, no, actually, I don't think it doesn't work for me to have such rigid boundaries about those relationships. So I do think I do tend to attract relationships and people in my life and seek them out where
yeah,
I know I can have the levels of conversation that I enjoy having, where I feel fulfilled by it. And I mean, I could look, Tyler, I can tell you on my calendar right now, and I plan conversations on a regular basis with a lot of them. This is not like a in the if we just happen to see each other at the store, which hardly ever happens. I have plans where I meet people on a regular basis or reach out to them on social media or whatever. And my personal and professional relationships both have a very fulfilling quality. So talk about joy and satisfaction. I really
yeah,
don't want to spend my time and energy in relationships that can't bring me a mixture of both,
yeah.
or that I can't provide both for the other person either, because it's very seldom one-sided. And if it is, you usually get ghosted. You don't get a call back.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Well, that's you said something right there, right? And I think we talked about this maybe a month or two ago, but yeah, when I think you start to find out, okay, which relationships are beneficial to me, but also
Yeah,
am I where I'm adding value, right? And I think
right.
those relationships are the ones that you can continue to grow and develop. But then, yeah, I think it is, you at some point in time, we realize, in adulthood or whether it's our personal or business lives, like, yeah, okay, this relationship is not going well.
Mhm.
Maybe I shouldn't put time and energy into this, or this relationship is not going well. How do I foster this relationship to get?
Yeah.
So I think it's just, yeah, it's interesting, how we go about that. But um,
And can I just add something else? I think the other thing is as you're sharing this, I'm also very present that all of the relationships, like I even think about my like my dentist or my optometrist, and I'm not kidding here. These are all people who have some intimate knowledge of my health in this case, right? Um, I do really, it's not a test. I don't test them, but I do. I do lean into, hey, so here's what's going on with me. Tell me a little bit about what you know. And I will cut off a professional relationship that I don't think could have a conversation about something personal. I'm not saying like I need to know that person's life history, but I'll give you an example. I went to get my eyes checked, a standard transaction. The person that's done it the last couple of years is no longer working there. They went off to another business or whatever. So there was this new doctor. And she and I started talking about all the things with my eyes. And I go once a year, nothing crazy. It's been easy. But I mentioned menopause because I'm in an era where I'm postmenopausal, right? And then she started sharing some things about her background and how she got into medicine and she did this. And I was like, oh my gosh, have you learned, have you followed this person on Instagram? And then, and we,
Boom,
in
instant
that
connection.
very short, I don't know, maybe 30-minute appointment, I really felt like, oh wow, this is a person who I know not only has the expertise, right, the credibility and the reliability. They showed up for the appointment, but that level of intimacy made me go, I, I'd schedule another appointment with this person. I'd come back to
Yep.
this clinic, right, even if the regular guy is no longer there. Um,
Yep.
yeah. And I think that's the kind of that's where I want to invest my time and money and energy in, you know, with clients and or with businesses that I know have either my best interest at heart or I see they have the community's best interest at heart. Otherwise, why? There's so many options.
There's so many options, and then I think that's kind of the segue to to this conversation around AI, right? Everyone's so worried about AI, and I guess um, maybe we should be, right? But is it going to take my job? Is it going to replace this career path, right?
Hmm.
I think really what it boils down to me is it should hopefully make people more efficient at their jobs. It should
Yeah,
help in certain ways, but people want that human element, the
sure.
experience that you just explained, right? Where it's needed, right? We
Yeah.
all kind of crave that interaction, and so. Um, Whether it's your eye doctor, your financial advisor, the guy that you take your car to work on the flux capacitor, whatever.
All of it, yes.
It's you need to be able to have that trust in that person, and part of that trust a lot of times comes just via some sort of mutual connection or
Mm-hmm.
interest, or oh my gosh, okay, I like this person, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and and so, yeah, I think that's extremely important for business and not again, not just business, but just people in general, right?
You
But
can say it. It's okay. Business is fine. There's nothing wrong with
but I
don't
think a business obviously,
don't
right?
come here trying to pretend like you're not a capitalist,
Yeah,
Tyler.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think business for sure, right? But I think even like the personal element of like I worry about this a lot.
Mm.
Um, the iPhone, like I think got my first iPhone in 2012, and I know I'm addicted to like checking my phone. Okay, let's get on Facebook or whatever really quick.
Mhm.
But our children, right? My son has my wife gave him her old phone, and he just has it connected to Wi-Fi. So, but he's just he can text his buddies, and do different stuff like that, FaceTime. But um, but he's on it so often, and I think about um what that's going to look like 20 years from now or 10 years from now
Right.
when a young mind has had this device
Yeah.
for so long. So anyhow, yeah, getting off topic, but I think them as young people learning, hey, you have to figure out ways to interact and to create connections and not just be behind our devices, right? We want to be able to
Yeah.
use these devices and help them make us more efficient. Help because an iPhone is pretty much you could use it to send emails, to phone calls, text, et cetera. It's basically like a home office, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh
so
man, you just said something and I'm gonna start to wrap up, I promise. But there's when you mentioned, so I remember reading this book. called The Scarcity Mind. I can't remember the name of the author, but I'll link it in the show notes. And one of the things that he talked about is so many of these technology companies are using the science of gambling, right? And how Vegas have designed slot machines and some of their games to use in on these phone apps. That's
Yep.
why they become so addictive. They give us like a dopamine hit every time, oh my gosh, we got a notification, or oh, we're scrolling just like we would like a slot machine. Like all of these things. So I thought that was interesting. And so you might start to look at that and see where you might draw a line when it comes to young people. But as you were talking about how that young brain is developed and how they um, the impact that these types of devices and technology have on your on the child's mind, I think we also can look at face-to-face relationships in the same way. Are we bringing the type of interactions and engagement that help people feel that dopamine hit in some cases, or that oxytocin when they feel bonded to us? Are we just being transactional?
Yeah.
Right? I think the challenge and the competition comes from technology does it, 100 times faster, more consistently and on demand. Humans don't have we just don't have the capacity to bring that level of engagement that often for that long.
24/7.
And and that also tells me that when we do have it, we need to bring it. And if nothing else, if we're creating a relationship where there's some stress involved, that it be like not the kind of stress that bogs us down, but the kind of stress that engages us, like in solving a problem, like that stress. They call it the good stress that helps like us solve, a challenge that we feel that we want to overcome. So I think what you're saying, what I'm getting from what you're saying, this distinction is if we're interacting with people and we want to bring out the best in those interactions, that it should feel as good as it possibly can. And it doesn't always have to be positive, but it has to be something that does bring a level of satisfaction and joy that people can now get on demand in their pocket 24/7.
Yeah.
It's hard to compete with those two, but I think having, and like on all of our exchanges, as you've pointed out, and that's one of the reasons I keep coming to you and saying, hey, can you do another podcast with me? Which, by the way, listeners, Tyler has been on all three of my podcasts. So, and I will add the links to the
Oh,
past. A Time to Come Alive. You Are Not Quite Strangers. So I introduce you to another random person. And then this one. And so I'm so grateful that all of our interactions have given me that sense of joy and satisfaction that connecting with you will either teach me something new, where I feel that there's a level of trust that I can now kind of ease into and relax because you've got it and you and your company are taking good care of me. And I see how you take care of other people and that's consistent. There's reliability there. But I don't take for granted that these exchanges have always left me with great energy and hope and support.
yeah. Likewise. And I appreciate you having me on. And I'm thankful for you that we met back in 2017, I think it was.
Yeah.
Because yeah, you've always been an inspiration to me, and I feel like it's the same thing, right? Just ditto. Our conversations are always insightful. I feel like I'm always learning from you. Easy to talk to. So yeah, so thank you for having me. I'm glad to be on the podcast again, and hopefully we can do it again. So
Yay! I'm gonna have to do like Saturday Night Live does, and they have like the jackets, the Five Timers Club. Maybe
there you
you
go.
like you get the jacket like
The
the Three
patch.
Timers
Yeah,
Club.
there we go. Perfect.
So grateful to have you, Tyler. So just wanted to say thank you to all of you who've tuned in to this episode of the Circle of Hope podcast. Hope that you're walking away with some nugget, some insight, something that resonates for you in how you build relationships with other people. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Circle of Hope. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and share with someone in your circle. And if you're curious about the upcoming book, visit valeriehope.com for updates and extras. Until then, stay connected.